Hello, today we'll be dealing with anus and anal canal. We'll first revise the anatomy of the anus and anal canal and then we'll go on to deal with the problems. Okay, first let me deal with the anatomy. The anal canal begins at the level where the rectum passes through the pelvic diaphragm and ends at the anal verge. We can all feel the anal verge. We have also, but we do not know where the rectum passes and where the pelvic diaphragm is. So I'll show you some pictures. The pelvic diaphragm is nothing but the muscles. The muscles between the rectum and the anal canal. And this can be felt with the finger as a thickened ridge when you examine the patient. And it is called the anorectal bundle or a ring. Okay. Now, what is the anorectal ring? The anorectal ring marks the junction between the rectum and the anal canal. The rectum ends, the anal canal starts. Now, you should know that the rectum is a continuation of the gut. It is part of the endoderm, whereas the anal canal is part of the ectoderm. It is part of the skin. Okay. It is the junction between the endoderm and the ectoderm. Okay. Now, it is formed by the joining of the puborectalis muscle from both sides, from the pubis to the rectum. The muscles will come, the muscle fibers are coming, will come. That they are part of the external sphincter. They are all part of the not the external sphincter as much as the pelvic diaphragm. They form the puborectalis muscle, the deep external sphincter, the conjoined longitudinal muscle, and the highest part of the internal sphincter. Of these, the internal sphincter is not under our control. The puborectalis muscle, the external sphincter, and the conjoined longitudinal muscle, if we tighten them, will form the continence. That is, they give us the control over the rectum, over passing stools. Then the anorectal ring is just at that level, and below that is the anus, above that is the rectum. Okay. Now here you can see the internal sphincter. This is part of the thing. It's a longitudinal section of part of the rectum and the anal canal. The upper part that you see there is part of the rectum. There, then you see the internal anal sphincter, the puborectalis muscle, the conjoined longitudinal muscle, and the anal canal. Okay, and the external sphincter muscle is clearly seen. The subcutaneous external anal sphincter is also seen there. Between the mucosa and the external sphincter are the muscles of the internal anal sphincter. The internal anal sphincter are longitudinal muscles. The puborectalis, conjoined muscle are all transverse, and the external sphincter is also transverse and surrounds the rectum. The external portion we have control over. It is supplied by the pudendal nerve. The internal sphincter is supplied by the parasympathetic nerves, of which we don't have control. Okay. Between the mucosa and the internal sphincter are a group of veins. Okay, these veins usually are usually not felt or seen, but sometimes when they become bulky and when they form varices, they may hang loose. Sometimes they may bleed, and this is called the what people normally call piles. Technically, we call them hemorrhoids. Okay. Now, here is the pelvic diaphragm, muscles of the pelvic diaphragm, which are seen from above. It is like you are looking at the floor of the pelvis from the abdomen. And if you are looking down, you can see within the pelvis, you can see the muscles. Those two long muscles which you see on either side are the psoas muscles, and on both sides, on either side of the psoas muscle, are the iliac muscles. So this forms the iliopsoas muscles, which go forward which come from the lumbar spine and from the ilium, and they go out of the pelvis into the thigh. Okay, and they go and get attached to the lesser trochanter of the femur. In between these two, on both sides, in between these two, these are paired muscles. In between these two, you see the pelvic diaphragm. There you see the iliococcygeus muscle, the pubococcygeus muscle, and it is perforated by 2 openings. In the male by 2 openings, in the female by 3 openings. In the male, it is the urethral canal and the rectum. In the female, in addition, between the urethra and the rectum, you have the vaginal canal. Okay, here again you see the puborectalis sling. You are seeing the vagina and the uterus here, and the pouch of Douglas between the vagina and the rectum, and the rectum is at the back, and here you see the puborectalis sling there. Above that is the rectum, below that is the anal canal. Okay, now you can see the rectal mucosa there and the anal mucosa. The anal mucosa is a little purplish colored, then it's the red colored, and the anal skin is whitish colored, and the true anal skin is pigmented. Okay, and the junction between the rectal mucosa and the anal mucosa is the junction between, and you can see it named as the dentate line here. That is where the ectoderm meets the endoderm. Endoderm is from the rectal mucosa and part of the anal mucosa, and then the dentate line, that is where the ectoderm fuses with the endoderm. The internal sphincter is composed of circular non-striated muscle. That's an involuntary muscle. They do not contain striae, and they are supplied by autonomic nerves, I said before. The external sphincter is composed of striated voluntary muscle. You can control it. If you don't want to pass stools, you can control it. If you want to pass stools, you can release it. There are very many things that we do when we want to pass stools. Very often the rectum may be distended with gas. The rectum and the anal canal are capable of sampling whatever is there, this distension, and knowing whether it is gas or whether it is liquid or whether it is solid, and accordingly you can control or release. You may choose to release the gas even when you are not going to the toilet, but only when you go to the toilet you will be releasing all the contents of the rectum. Okay, so the external sphincter and the puborectalis sling and the pelvic diaphragm, all of which control the passage of materials from the rectum out through the anal canal. Okay, control of this is called continence. If we are not able to control it, it's called incontinence. Okay, and the space between the external and the internal sphincters is called the intersphincteric plane. Okay, now the superior part of the external sphincter fuses with the puborectalis muscle. Okay, and because of the puborectalis muscle, there is a sling and it pulls. There is an angulation. Now this angulation also helps to maintain the sphincter. That is, everything, the contents of the rectum move from up to down as well as from backwards forwards. Okay, and the puborectalis sling holds that, and then the anal canal moves a little backwards so that it is controlled there. The lower part of the anal canal is lined by sensitive squamous epithelium. It can sample and find out whether it is gas or whether it is liquid or whether it is solid. The stools are solid or whatever, and if it is gas, it can allow the sphincter to relax and let the gas out at times which are not necessarily where you want to pass stools. Okay, blood supply of the anal canal is via the superior and the middle and inferior rectal vessels, and they all come from the internal iliac arteries. And the lymphatic drainage of the lower half of the anal canal goes into the inguinal lymph nodes. Okay, inguinal lymph nodes, the lower half, upper part of it will go into the iliac nodes, and then all these drain into the para-aortic nodes and later into the cisterna chyli. Now, to examine the anal canal, we need to see what is there, we need to feel what is there, and to look deep, we can use what is called proctoscope. Okay, so first of all, we just have to take a look, we inspect, then we do a digital examination with our finger, and then after that we do a proctoscopy. We put in a proctoscope to see what the mucosa is like, whether there's an ulcer, whether there is a mass, or whether there is a hemorrhoids. Okay, the positions that we make the patient, we may make the patient lie in the left lateral position, which is called the Sims position, or we can make them lie in the jackknife or knee elbow position, keeping the knees and elbows down on the ground. We can examine them in that position, or we can examine the patient in the lithotomy position. Lithotomy means removal of a stone. We remove stones from the bladder. In the old days, when they removed stone from the bladder, they made the patient lie in a particular position, and they made an incision in the perineum to remove the stone. So it's called the lithotomy position. In the next slide, you will see the three positions. The left lateral or the Sims position you see on the left hand side on the top. On the left hand side below, you see the jackknife or the knee elbow position, and on the right side you see the lithotomy position. We can examine the rectum in any one of these positions. Okay. Now, what are the problems that the person can encounter? One is called an imperforate anus. This is a child is born without an anus. The rectum closes above. So there, what has happened is that the ectoderm and the endoderm are not continuous. Between the ectoderm and the endoderm, the mesoderm is becoming continuous. The mesoderm has interfered, so the ectoderm and the endoderm have not met to allow the anal canal to form. So all the contents of the gut will stop at the rectum, and then it will not be able to come out. The anus is blocked. So the child is born, and when the child is born, it will not be passing meconium. Okay, you can see that the rectum is closed. You can see that the anal canal is closed. You will only find the anal dimple. Okay, so it can be classified as high or low. Okay, if it is a low defect, there's very little bit of the anal canal that is missing, then we can easily make the anal canal. It is easy to correct, but the person will be prone to having constipation because they do not have good muscle relaxation. Okay, high defects are more difficult to correct. High defects we will correct, and we usually correct it for the children for the babies in stages, and afterwards, because the muscles are not well formed, they will not even if the muscles are present, they are not well formed, and even when they contract, they will not cause contraction of the sphincters around the anal canal. They will just cause contraction of the muscles. So the anal canal the sphincter will not be well formed around the anal canal, and so the person can be incontinent. So here you see on both pictures of imperforate anus. On the left side, you see there is a coin or a metal piece that has been kept on the anal dimple. On the right side, they've kept something bigger on the anal dimple. They are holding the child upside down, and about 1 hour after birth, the child would have swallowed some air, and that air has been, by peristalsis, worked down from the esophagus through the stomach, through the duodenum, through the intestines, the small intestine and the large intestine. It has come to the rectum. You can see the gas shadow in the rectum, and the gas shadow is very, very close to that metal piece which has been kept in the anal dimple, and therefore you know that this imperforate anus is of the low type. So you can easily correct it, and after correction, the child may have constipation for life. It will have some constipation problems for life. The next picture on the right, which is called B, you see a metal piece has been kept near the anal dimple. Even the anal dimple is not very well formed. It is just, so the metal piece is just kept there on the surface. The child has been held upside down, and you can see that the that the gas shadow is nowhere near it. The gas shadow has ended near the sacrum, hasn't even come to the coccyx. So it is a high imperforate anus. It is a high defect, and so the anal canal has to be created. So we will not do that when the child is born. What we will do is we will make an outlet for the feces in the abdominal wall itself, and that will bring the colon out. It's called a colostomy, and the child will be able to pass stools through the colon. When the child is a little older, maybe 2 or 3 years, we will make a anal canal. We'll make a new anal canal, and after that anal canal is functioning properly, we will close the colostomy. Treatment of anorectal malformations. Low anomalies with a perineal fistula can be treated by anoplasty. Sometimes there may be a perineal fistula. It may not open out in the anum or the anus. It may open up a little anteriorly. In the females, usually, it could open into the vagina. So anorectal malformations will be an absence of an anal canal. Along with the absence of an anal canal, it may open through an fistula, and this fistula may be into the vagina. So in these cases, it can be into the vagina. Sometimes there may be a malformation of the entire perineum, so that it may actually the urethra, the vagina, and the anus may open through a common opening called the cloaca. Okay. So in which case complex reconstruction is required. Okay. So we will have to do an anorectoplasty, but we will not do an anorectoplasty immediately. We will do a colostomy first, and after the child is older and able to tolerate a major surgery, we will do an anorectal surgery. Okay. The main thing is to have a continent bowel, but sometimes it is related to the anorectal abnormality and the presence of associated defects and the presence of the anorectal sling of muscles. Then, other conditions. Post-anal dermoid. Behind the anus, you may have a dermoid cyst. That is a burial of some ectoderm which forms a cyst, and this can be a dermoid cyst. A post-anal dimple. A dimple is nothing but ஒரு சின்ன குழி மாதிரி இருக்கும். So that is because the ectoderm comes together there and the skin comes together there to form a small dimple. Pilonidal sinus. Pilonidal sinus is a passage which is formed by hair. It is not formed by hair that is growing, but by hair that has fallen from the back of the head down. Sometimes the hair will fall down, will get channelized, and during hair cutting and all, the edges of the hair will be very sharp. Sometimes the hair will form a small hole just behind the anal canal or near the coccyx or near the sacrum, and there it will form a sinus. So it's called a pilonidal sinus, and there can be some pus there, and there can be some infection there, and that needs to be totally excised. Anal incontinence. Anal incontinence has many reasons. Sometimes it is because of the poor nerve supply, malformation of the nerve supply to the rectum. Sometimes it may be because of an imperforate anus or a cloacal opening, or it can be it can be because of trauma or because of surgery. So anal incontinence, we'll deal with anal incontinence a little later. Now, fissure in ano. Fissure is nothing but a small cleft. It is like a crack. You can get a crack in the anus, a small crack, a discontinuity, and because of that there are some problems. I will discuss that in detail. Next is hemorrhoids. Hemorrhoids is nothing but the engorgement or collection of a lot of blood in the veins, and they will hang loose in the from the mucosal lining. It's called piles. Moolon solvaanga Tamil. Okay, that's hemorrhoids. Then pruritus ani. Pruritus means inflammation that causes itching. Okay, so around the anus sometimes you can have itching. Okay, then anorectal abscess between the anus and the rectum, or outside the anus and the rectum in the buttock region, you may have an abscess. That is because this is an unclean area. Sometimes the glands will get blocked by fecal material, and it can get blocked and infected, and abscess can form. So anorectal abscess formation is there. Fistula in ano. Sometimes the anorectal abscess can burst inside and outside and form a connection between the anal canal and the skin, or between the rectum and the skin. All this is called fistula in ano. If it forms in the anal canal without going through the sphincter, it is dealt with differently. But if it is going through the sphincter, it is dealt with differently. And if it is going above the sphincter, it is dealt with differently. Okay, now we'll deal with the pilonidal sinus. It describes a condition which is found in the natal cleft. The natal cleft is the cleft between the two buttocks, and it overlies the coccyx. Okay, and it consists of one or more, usually non-infected midline openings. They communicate with the fistulous tract, which is lined by granulation tissue containing hair loosely lying within the lumen. This hair does not grow from within. This hair is hair that has fallen into the sinus. Okay, it's a common affliction amongst the military people, and it is referred to as the jeep disease. It occurs because of sitting in a jeep or sitting in a vehicle and traveling long distances, or very often continuing to travel, and then the hair that falls from the head or the hair that has been cut off can fall down there, fall down between the person's pant and the skin, and then it can get into the skin. It can form the sinus. It is found more frequently in men, and it's usually after the fourth decade of life, after when they're probably 40 years or 50 years of age, before the fourth decade of life, around the time when they are 30-40. Okay, they complain of pain. They complain of intermittent pain. It will not be all the time, it will be intermittent, and there can be swelling, and then when they press there, they'll find some discharge on their hands, they'll find some fluid in their hands. It's coming from the pilonidal sinus, and because of this infection, sometimes they can have fever. So this is called constitutional symptoms. Okay, now the next thing that you need to know is that it may have many openings. It can have one opening, it can have many openings, and they are all in the midline, usually at the level of the sacrococcygeal joint and or the tip of the coccyx. Okay, the hair are all dead hair. They have no follicles. That means they have been cut. The sharp ends and the ends are pointed inwards. The cavity is filled with dirty granulation tissue. The hole itself may have been created by the sharp ends of the hair. Okay, it needs cleaning, curettage, or surgical excision. Once it is surgically excised, it will be healed. Once the sinus is excised, it will heal. Next is anal incontinence. That is, the person does not have control over the bowel movements. The stools will come out without the person's control. Okay, the causes of anal incontinence are many. Some are congenital in childhood. They can happen because of anorectal abnormalities, like we saw the imperforate anus, or we can see the rectovaginal fistula. It can happen because of spina bifida, meningocele, meningomyelocele. In all these cases, the lower end of the spinal cord is malformed. So there are the nerves emanating from there, the nerves coming out of the spinal cord into the skin and into the supplying the muscles will not be there, or they may be defective, and because of that they won't have any control over the sphincter, and so they may have anal incontinence. Associated with that, in meningomyelocele and in meningocele, they may have even urinary incontinence. Hirschsprung's disease. Hirschsprung's disease is a disease in which there is no control over the distal part of the colon. So the proximal part of the nerve supply is absent to a part of the rectum or to the colon. And so because of that, this will be collapsed. Above that, the colon will be what is called a megacolon. It will get filled up, and it will be very big. But below that, it will be tight and it will be small, and there will be no control over that part of the colon. So that part of the colon will be very tight. So it is called the defect is beyond the colon. The defect is distal, but proximally it will be dilated and it will have a big colon. So they call it a megacolon. Hirschsprung disease is because of that. And so the person will have no control over the distal colon. They will have no control over the rectum and over the anorectal ring and the sphincter. Then there is behavioral. Behavioral can be because of mental retardation, can be because of psychological problems, that the person behaves differently and has incontinence. It can be psychological, not because of any organic problem. Okay. Anal incontinence can occur in adulthood because of diabetes, because of a head injury, because of cerebrovascular accident, because of Parkinson's disease, when the person loses control, voluntary control of the muscles. It can happen because of multiple sclerosis, where nerve tissue is replaced by fibrous tissue. Spinal cord injury can cause, or a paraplegic patient can have incontinence. Other neurological conditions, myotonic dystrophy, that is the problem of the muscles. The problem is not of the nerve but of the muscles. The muscles are not able to contract. The muscles are diseased. Then amyloid neuropathy. The nerves are replaced by amyloid tissue. Amyloid tissue is a kind of fatty tissue that replaces different kinds of tissues. You can have amyloidosis of the liver, you can have amyloidosis of the spleen, you can have amyloidosis of the kidney. This amyloid tissue, if it replaces the nerves supplying the sphincters, then you can have amyloid neuropathy, and that can cause incontinence. Gastrointestinal infection. There can be an infection of the gastrointestinal tract, and the person may have loss of control of the sphincter. That is because there's so much of liquid, the liquid will keep leaking through. Irritable bowel syndrome, metabolic bowel diseases, okay, inflammatory bowel diseases, and the megacolon or the megarectum, which is very closely related to Hirschsprung's disease. Okay. Trauma can also cause anal incontinence. Anal trauma can occur because of injuries, because of falling, or because of direct injury to the rectum and anus, or it can happen because of abdominal surgery, because of small bowel resection, because of colonic resection. The person may have incontinence because during this resection we may have damaged the nerves. Pelvic surgery like hysterectomy and rectal excision can cause the nerve supply to the sphincters to be affected, and so the person can have incontinence. Then there can be pelvic malignancy, cancer of the rectum, cancer of the vagina, cancer of the uterus, cancer of the bladder. All this can cause damage to the nerves surrounding that area if it infiltrates those nerves, and that can cause incontinence. Pelvic radiotherapy. Sometimes we may give radiation therapy for pelvic cancers, and if that radiation therapy can damage the nerves, and when the nerve is damaged because of radiotherapy, you can get anal incontinence. Rectal prolapse. That is, rectal prolapse is a condition where the rectum comes outside, like it will become inside out, like a sleeve. Like you can pull your sleeve, the sleeve of your shirt or your blouse, you can pull it inside out. Like that, the rectum can become pulled inside out and hang outside. That is called a rectal prolapse. Then you can have rectal evacuationary disorders, which can be because of a rectocele or intussusception. Rectoceles can occur in vaginal prolapse, in uterine prolapses and vaginal prolapses, you can have the rectum also hanging out because it is attached there. It will be hanging out uh, through the vaginal vault in the in the his, in the prolapsed uterus or the prolapsed vagina. Or intussusception. We talked about intussusception during intestinal obstruction, where the intestine loop goes into itself and it is pushed outwards. So an intussusception also can cause a evacuatory disorder. Or there can be pelvic floor. The pelvic floor may not act together. While some fibers of the pelvic floor are relaxing, others may be tightening, or while others are tightening, some may be relaxing. And if that happens, that's called dyssynergia, and so the person can have incontinence. Anal surgery like hemorrhoidectomy, surgery for fistula in ano or a fissure in ano, or relieving a rectal impaction, disimpaction, can all cause problems of the anal canal. Obstetric events like even a normal delivery or a prolonged labor or rectovaginal fistula or vaginal fistulas through the bladder, causing urinary incontinence. All these things can cause anal incontinence. Obstetric events can cause anal incontinence. Suppose there is a tear of the vagina during delivery, that can cause. If you can get a complete perineal tear during a delivery because the child has a big head or because it is a difficult delivery or while applying forceps, these obstetric events can lead to anal incontinence. Okay. Anal incontinence can be general also. Generally, they can occur with aging, old people, dependence on nursing care, some people who are constantly dependent on nursing care. Obesity can cause the nerve, because the nerves may have to be stretched and they can lose their function because of their stretching. Psychobehavioral factors can also cause anal incontinence. Intellectual incapacity like mental retardation can cause anal incontinence. Drugs that are used can be primarily constipating or laxative agents. Sometimes you want the stools to become hard so that the person will be able to control the passage of stools, or sometimes you might want them to become soft, because when the stools become very hard, they will accumulate in the rectum, stretch the rectum, and only liquid will be able to get past them, and then that can lead to incontinence. So it depends on the reason why the person has incontinence. You might want to give them constipating agents, or you might want to give laxative agents. And then secondary effects of so many problems, like we have already seen, they can all cause anal incontinence. Surgery to repair the injured muscle. If the person has anal incontinence, the injured muscles need to be repaired. Or you can replace the muscle with the gracilis muscle. The gracilis muscle is on the inside of the thigh. This muscle, along with its nerve supply and blood supply, can be implanted as a sphincter around the anorectal ring. Okay. Fissure in ano. Sometimes a crack in the anal canal. It's a longitudinal split in the anoderm, in the skin of the anal canal, the distal anal, which extends from the anal verge proximally towards but not beyond the dentate line. Anal fissure can be acute or chronic. It can be an ischemic ulcer in the midline of the anal canal, or if not in the midline, it may be a malignancy. Any of these can cause pain during defecation. The fissure injures the skin and it causes a crack in the skin, and it also exposes the internal sphincter. The internal sphincter in response contracts, and this causes a lot of pain. So they can present with pain. The person can present with bleeding because it is a small ulcer, or you can have continuous mucus discharge, or the person can have constipation. Constipation because they are afraid to go to the toilet. They will not strain, and because of that the stool becomes hard inside. Because the stool becomes hard, to evacuate it, the person has to strain a lot, and that causes a lot more pain. That causes stretching of the skin and a lot more pain. So all this can continue to keep the fissure in place. The internal sphincter muscle is in spasm, and because it is in spasm, it is painful, and the pain also will make the person go into more spasm. So the anal fissure, the fissure in anus continues to be there. The management, how do we manage it? It can be managed conservatively by giving laxatives and local anesthetic applications like xylocaine gel. The person can take xylocaine jelly in his or her hand and push it inside and rub it around the fissure. Or you can have anal dilatation, but this anal dilatation has to be done under anesthesia. It's very painful and the person can go into shock. Okay. And then you can do lateral anal sphincterotomy. On the lateral side, you can just cut the internal sphincter. If you cut the internal sphincter, it will retract, it will go away, and after that it cannot go into spasm. And so it will not constrict the anal canal and cause the pain of the anal fissure. And when there is no pain and when the muscle is cut, it will relax and the skin will come together and healing can take place. Hemorrhoids. Hemorrhoids is the engorgement of the veins. The veins get engorged with blood. The submucosal veins of the anal canal get engorged with blood and they hang down. Sometimes they can bleed, and they are called varices. Just like varicose veins, they are called varices. Sometimes they can bleed, sometimes they can give rise to infection, and sometimes they can give rise to a lump that comes out of the anal canal. We usually call it piles. They occur because of raised intra-abdominal pressure, and this intra-abdominal pressure is thought to contribute to the development of anal varicosities. They occur usually in three positions. If you place the patient in the lithotomy position and have a look at the anus, on the right side they occur at 3 o'clock position, on the left side, lower side, they can occur at the 7 o'clock position, and superiorly on the left side they can occur at the 11 o'clock position. Okay. Symptoms of hemorrhoids are bright red painless bleeding, or you can have mucus discharge, or you may have some prolapse of the hemorrhoids, and the pain occurs only when the hemorrhoids are prolapsed, and if they become clotted, that is, we call it the prolapsed hemorrhoids are usually because of clots. There are 4 degrees of hemorrhoids. The first degree, they are bleeding. They are only bleeding. And so there is no prolapse. Second degree is prolapse, but it can reduce spontaneously. It goes back inside. While passing stools, it comes out. Otherwise, it goes back inside. Third degree, the prolapse is there. It comes out and hangs outside. And the person has to push it back inside with the finger. And the fourth is permanently prolapsed. It's always outside. You can't even reduce it. You can't push it inside. Okay. The complications of hemorrhoids are it can be strangulated or it can be thrombus. Thrombus is nothing but clotted hemorrhoids. When I say clotted hemorrhoids, I meant thrombosed hemorrhoids. Okay. So the complication is thrombosis and strangulation. Strangulation is that it is நெருக்கிறது, கழுத்து நெருக்கிறது வந்து ஸ்ட்ராங்குலேஷன். அந்த ஹெமராய்ட்ஸ் வெளியே தொங்கும்போது அந்த நேரோ பார்ட் உள்ளே போகுதில்ல, அது வந்து அப்படி நெருக்கிடுச்சுன்னா அதுக்கு blood supply இருக்காது, அது கேங்க்ரீன் ஆயிரும். ஸோ that is a complication of hemorrhoids. Another thing can be ulcer. You can get ulcer because of bleeding and because you're pushing it up and the person is pushing it up and it comes out by itself and all that, you can get ulceration. Gangrene can occur. If this becomes infected infection can travel up the rectal veins through the inferior mesenteric vein into the splenic vein and into the portal system. So you can get portal pyemia. Into the hepatic portal system you can get portal pyemia. So the liver also can get infected. Then you can get fibrosis. Fibrosis is when after all these problems healing occurs, the veins are no longer hemorrhoids, but they have become fibrosed, and this fibrosis can cause fibrosis of the anal canal itself. If the anal canal becomes fibrosed, it becomes very tight and become very difficult to pass stools. Okay, here you can see around the anus some warty growth. On the right side you can see a thrombosed pile, a thrombosed hemorrhoid. Okay. Treatment of hemorrhoids is symptomatic. You advise about defecatory habits. You can give them laxatives. You can inject a sclerosant. Sclerosants can be very hot water or hypernormal saline, which you can inject into the hemorrhoids, and this can cause the fibrosis of the hemorrhoids. You can use banding. That is, you use a rubber band. It is not the usual rubber band. You can't use the usual rubber band. There are special bands which are made, which can be used to put a band around the neck of the hemorrhoid, and so the distal part of it beyond the band will become gangrene and fall off. And even this band will fall off, and so it can be used as treatment. Or you can have hemorrhoidectomy. In hemorrhoidectomy, it is nothing but doing it under anesthesia. What we do is we hold the hemorrhoid, we tie it proximally so that blood doesn't come into the hemorrhoid, and after tying it off we cut off the remaining part of the hemorrhoid that is outside. Hemorrhoidectomy has complications. Early complications are your patient can have pain, or they can have retention of urine, acute retention, not chronic, acute retention. That is immediately following the surgery they can have retention of urine, or they can have hemorrhage, that is bleeding. Late complications are secondary hemorrhage. Secondary hemorrhage is because of infection. Now acute hemorrhage, which is called reactionary hemorrhage, is because the blood pressure, we tie the vessel, and because the blood pressure would have fallen during surgery, we would have tied off the vessel. Then after the person's, if it starts paining, or if the person is under stress, what will happen is the blood pressure will come up, and as the blood pressure comes up, the tie that you have tied may be pushed out, and then the person can start bleeding a lot. Okay, so that's a reactionary hemorrhage. Secondary hemorrhage is because of infection. It happens on the 6th or 7th post-operative day. Because of infection of the site of tying off the vessel, the suture can fall off because it is infected, and then the person can start bleeding. You can have anal stricture, you can have anal fissure, and you can have incontinence. Anorectal abscess. This is an infection. This is an abscess that is formed. It is a cavity containing pus. It is very painful. It will be throbbing pain, and there can be a swelling in the anal region. The patient often has Fever, fever. Pyrexia is fever. We can, according to the anatomical location of the anorectal abscess, we can call it a perineal abscess or an ischiorectal abscess or a submucous abscess or a pelvirectal abscess. The person may get an infection because of a fistula, or they may get it because of Crohn's disease, diabetes, immunosuppression. They may also get it because of a fissure, infected fissure. The treatment of this is to drain the pus. The pus has to be drained. We can either do this through an incision or aspiration, but the pus has to be drained, and after that you have to give antibiotics for the patient. Okay, it may be because of a fistula in ano, but we always have to look for an underlying condition. Crohn's disease may be a condition because of which it's got a perianal abscess, or it may be ulcerative colitis, or it may be celiac disease. Fistula in ano. A fistula is a sinus or a cavity with openings on two sides. Opening onto the epithelial lining, on any epithelial lining. You can have a fistula that is, both ends may open on the skin. You can have a fistula where both ends may open in the mucosa. Or you can have a fistula where one end opens in the mucosa and the other ends open in the skin. In fistula in ano, usually one end opens in the anal mucosa or in the rectal mucosa, and the other end opens in the skin outside the anus. The fistula may traverse just the submucosa, or it may traverse the sphincters, or it may go above the sphincters into the pelvis. So depending upon that, they will have names such as intersphincteric fistula in ano, transsphincteric fistula in ano, suprasphincteric fistula in ano, or extrasphincteric fistula in ano. Now this is called Goodsall's rule. Goodsall's rule says that if you draw a line across the anus, dividing it into two halves, if the fistula is anterior, the opening, if the fistula is opening anteriorly, it will follow the shortest path to the mucosa. Whereas every fistula that occurs posterior to this line will actually lead to the midline, will always open on the midline, will not open directly. It will follow a curved path. This is Goodsall's rule. It is true, and it holds true in most cases. There can always be exceptions. Okay, so here is how we do the retrograde probing. Here is a retrograde probing of the fistula. You probe it from the inside of the anal canal, and there you can get it into the fistula, and then it will come out. That is the best way to do the probing. Crohn's disease, tuberculosis can be associated with fistula in ano, and the best way of curing a fistula is to lay it open or to excise it entirely. Fistulectomy, removing the fistula. Ectomy means to remove the fistula. Fistula in ano are usually complicated by recurrence and incontinence if it is very high. If it is a simple fistula just under the skin and the mucosa, it is very easy to excise. But if it is intersphincteric, transsphincteric, even intersphincteric is alright, but if it is transsphincteric or if it is above the sphincter, then it can cause incontinence, because in excising the fistula, in removing the fistula, we will be injuring the external sphincter. We will need temporary colostomy, or we can put in setons. Okay. Setons are nothing but a string or any suture material, or maybe a tube which you pass through the fistula, it will go through the fistula, it will pass through the entire fistulous tract from the skin to the mucous membrane, and then we bring it out through the anal canal and tie it around like a ring, like a string, that is a ring passing through the fistula. Now what will happen is, each time we will ask the patient every day to pull it a little bit. So what he will be doing is, he will be causing a small ulcer on the mucosal side. Then that ulcer will come together and heal. Then we'll ask him to pull again. So the string will be there forming the fistula, but above that it will keep on healing. And we ask the patient to pull a little bit daily, pull it out daily, pull a little daily, so that it keeps on causing wounds further and further and further inferiorly, and the fistula will slowly close from above. Okay, so as we open up the fistula and make it subcutaneous, above that it will be healing and coming. So this method of putting a seton in place and then slowly pulling it out so that the fistula closes from inside outward, this is called a seton technique. Okay, otherwise what we can do is, we can do a colostomy, prevent stools from coming down into the rectum, and so they will not contaminate this area. The fistula will heal, and after it heals, we can open up the rectum. We can open up the colostomy again. We can repair the colostomy, and the patient will pass new stools just like he was passing through the anal canal. Okay. You can have strictures of the anus. You can have benign or malignant strictures. Strictures are tightness. They become very tight and fibrous, so that they form a stricture and they are very difficult to release. Now, benign ones, they can be spasmodic or organic. They may be iatrogenic. They may be caused by a hernia, hemorrhoidectomy, or a repair of an imperforate anus. Always a biopsy must be taken, because it could be malignant, and it has to be managed by regular dilatation. You pass dilators of increasing diameter through the anus, through the anal canal, to manage these strictures. Malignant stricture can be caused by anal cancer. It is uncommon. Usually it's a squamous cell carcinoma. It can be associated with human papilloma virus. It is most prevalent in patients with HIV infection, and it may affect the anal verge or the anal canal. Lymphatic spreads is along the inguinal lymph nodes. It usually comes as a squamous cell carcinoma. Treatment is by chemotherapy. Ablative surgery is to excise the whole thing. If all else fails, we may have to just excise the fibrous stricture all around. Okay. Malignant disease of the anal canal can be squamous cell carcinoma, adenocarcinoma, which may spread from the rectum, because the rectal mucosa has columnar adenomatous epithelium, whereas the skin has squamous cell epithelium. Now, if it is a tumor of the anal canal, it will manifest as a squamous cell carcinoma, whereas if it is arising from the rectum, it will be an adenocarcinoma. Another thing that you can get is malignant melanoma. Malignant melanoma is nothing but a melanoma. Melanomas are patches of skin with increased amount of melanin, increased pigmentation. Machon solluvom melanoma, and so this can become a melanoma. If it is malignant, it will grow in size, and this can become this is a malignancy, which usually spreads by the bloodstream, whereas the adenocarcinoma and the squamous cell carcinoma will spread through the lymphatics. So this is all that I want to say about diseases of the anal canal. Okay, so this is the end of the lecture. Thank you.